have women that have been delivering milk. They have handled telephone and telegraph duties. They are operating the trolleys and the streetcars. They are creating templates and handling all sorts of other duties throughout. So there's, perhaps you remember, the 1943 May Saturday Evening Post cover done by Norman Rockwell.
Oh, yes,
He's got
yes.
Rosie sitting on a stool, and she's got her rivet gun across her lap, and her rivet mask has the mask part thrown back because she's chomping on a ham sandwich before she goes back to work. Well, you can imagine that my riveting friends absolutely adore that cover illustration. And I like it too, but the one that really catches my fancy is the one he did for September 8th, 1943. And in that one, you've got Rosie striding across the street, and she's got her white and red trousers on and a blue shirt, and she's got her nurse's hat, and she's got a cap for the trolleys. She's got the change purse for the trolleys, her milk bottles, a bundle of books to indicate teaching, and all those different things. So that one, to me, captures all the different jobs that women do. Some of these women never worked outside the home before. But then there were others, like teachers and sales clerks, cleaning ladies and maids, who decided to quit their jobs and get a job in the defense plant. Because, of course, they wanted to be more involved in the war effort. But another reason was its higher pay. And some of that money goes to support the war bonds, and that's what they purchase with their extra money. As I said, this is happening throughout the United States. Obviously, in Detroit and other industrial cities, and on the East Coast and West Coast, you've got women, thousands of women, that are welding and riveting. That's where you get the nickname Rosie the Riveter. But I mentioned all these others in making armaments and bullets and things like that. So those women also have an acronym, and that's WOW, Women Ordnance Workers. I really like being a WOW.
Yeah, you are.
I am a WOW,
WOW,
aren't I?
yes.
But then I should mention that women are also being recruited right out of college to do some jobs. Curtis Wright has recruited them, many times math teachers, like from Denver University, and they will take them and put them in another university to complete an engineering school. And then they come out and they work for Curtis Wright at Columbus, Ohio, or St. Louis, or somewhere else. There are also women, mostly foreign language students and English majors, and they're being recruited to be cryptanalysts and code breakers in Washington, D.C. So many different jobs, just so many.
Wonderful. It's just wonderful to see so many women doing so many things to help the war effort. It's so critical for our soldiers. I know 65% of the aviation workers are women, building our airplanes. But what about the WASPs that we hear so much about?
The WASPs, the Women Air Force Service Pilots. Well, they had to be registered or licensed pilots, then they'd apply to the program. If they were accepted, they were sent down on their own expense to Sweetwater, Texas, to go through military pilot training. And it was the same training that our male pilots for combat duty are doing. Once they're done, and about 1,100 have completed the program, they then are sent throughout the United States to do a variety of missions that are going to free a man for combat piloting. They will ferry airplanes from one end of the country to another. They'll also transport authorities like the Weather Bureau officials and things from one Weather Bureau station to another in the Midwest. You've got women that will test new aircraft as it comes out of the plants, or aircraft that has been damaged and somehow needed to be repaired, and so the women take up those airplanes. Wow. I've heard that when they have to go up on a repaired airplane, that they will ask the mechanic who worked on the plane to go up with the test flight. I think that's thinking pretty good.
Yeah.
But one of the most interesting jobs they have is for gunnery practice. So what they do is you've got the men on the ground with their guns and the artillery, and they're going to shoot up, at these planes. Well, the women fly the planes across, but it's got a large banner in the back. And they're supposed to aim at the banner. And their ammunition is tainted with red and green and yellow and blue dye or something. And so then when they come back from their flight, they land the airplane and everybody can go look at the banner and see where it was hit with yellow or blue. Sometimes they also look at the tail of the gun, of the pilot, of the airplane, and they see some marks there too, which must be a little bit frightening. So that's what the WASP are doing. Now, they're not military though.
Right.
You know, we have Army nurses and Navy nurses. Some of them were stationed in the Philippines before the attack on Pearl Harbor. And unfortunately, about 65 of them were captured when the Philippines and Corregidor fell, and they're still being held in captivity. But Army and Navy nurses have been right on the heels of the fellows, landing, 3 days and 10 days after Normandy invasion had pretty much kind of settled down. I know I talked with one Army nurse, and she told me she could see, she wrote in a letter, that she could see the strings of the parachutes still hanging from the trees. So they're also flight evacuation nurses, and that's something new for this particular war. And then we have the WACs, the Women's Army Corps. They're sent overseas as well as being, hundreds of them here in the States. And they're mechanics and surgical technicians and working in transportation and mapping and communications. They're also doing a lot of work with photography. And the main place they're being trained is Lowry Air Base.
Oh.
Yeah, so that's going on. But tell General Eisenhower also, remind him that we have other military women that are still stateside. We've got the SPARs, that's the women in the Coast Guard. We've got the WAVES, the women in the Navy, and then the Marines, they're just women Marines, that are working here. So they're also freeing a man to fight and doing a lot of important duties that way.
Wonderful. So many women working in the military and civilians. Now, what about the women that don't work, that do volunteer work? I know myself and some of the officers' wives, we roll bandages at the Red Cross. So what are some other volunteer opportunities for women who aren't working?
Well, it seems like every woman is volunteering someplace. I mean, they're taking fresh baked goods down to Union Station and the Pueblo Station, stations throughout the state, and also the USO clubs to treat the soldiers as they come in on the troop trains or are stationed here for a little while in the USOs. And then we have women that are taking nutrition classes and first aid classes from the Red Cross. That's also very important. Perhaps the general has come across Donut Girls. Has he mentioned them? So
no.
they are with the Red Cross, and they're working in England and in France, and they have a large converted bus that has a donut making machine as well as a coffee making machine and a phonograph at the back end. So they're going awfully close to the front lines and serving hundreds and thousands of donuts and coffee and dispensing a lot of the good old American cheer and smiles for our GIs. That's what they're doing. We also have women that, are buying war bonds. A lot of that. For $18.75, you can buy a $25 war bond, and then in 10 years, I can turn it into the government and receive my full $25. So I am supporting the war now while the government needs the money.
Wonderful. So even some of the women who have to stay home and take care of their small children are also helping the war effort. So I brought some of the 300 letters that Ike has written me during the war. And I would like to share some of these letters with you and especially talk about how important the mail is to this war effort. It's the best way that we can boost morale for the soldiers is by writing letters. They look so forward to hearing from home. And so we try to be very positive and cheerful when we write to them and tell them how much we miss them. My friends and I have letter writing parties.
Nice.
And we get together and write to many, many servicemen and women all at the same time. And we like to send care packages sometimes with our letters. And so we can send cookies and baked goods. We send books and socks. And we even record on 78 RPM records. We can record our voices and send those so that they can hear our voices. Recently, the Postmaster General said that mail from home is a military necessity to boost the morale of our troops. So my friends and I are doing our best to keep the mail going overseas. Did you know that Americans have sent 3.5 billion pieces of mail overseas since the war started? I know, isn't it wonderful? So they do get a voice from home. I can't stress how important it is to use V-mail. V-mail is lightweight and much faster, and the government is really encouraging us to use V-mail because we can send a lot of letters for much less weight. We can send, V-mail is only 4.5 by 5.5. I brought some to show you, yes, and so you do know about the V-mail. Yes, it's 4.5 by 5.5 inches, and it's on microfilm, so you can send a long letter on a tiny piece of paper. And you can send 2,500 pounds of regular mail with only 45 pounds of V-mail. So it's very efficient, and it saves a lot of money, and it's also gets there fast. We have sent 556 million V-mails since they started the program. I know, isn't it wonderful?